But the difference between conventional banks and Islamic banks is that Islamic banks, they do it as a penalty. And when they charge you as the penalty, they don't take it as part of their income. Neither does it go to any of their staff or their shareholders or their Sharia scholars. It goes to charity, because it is essentially as a penalty against deliberate deliberate delay in repayment. But otherwise, if it is stipulated, the delayed payment charges as a charge against the opportunity cost of you paying back the money at the time when I was supposed to use it, then that is regarded as interest. Rahim, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very good morning to all of you. Welcome to this training on the fundamentals of Islamic banking and finance. And I'm happy to see these faces, that it's only your interest that has motivated you to come and participate. As Malam Salisu said, this is normally like a 5-day training, but we are compressing it into a few hours of training. And the fundamentals that I'm supposed to take you through is supposed to be at least a whole day, but we are compressing it into like 2 hours. So I'll try to take you through to understand the concept, to understand this new proposition, and what you need to know about it as either as potential stakeholders to the new value proposition, or even either as customers or promoters even, or experts in future, possibly, inshallah. So I hope within these 2 hours we'll be able to have this understanding. So in introducing Islamic finance, as you know, finance is something which is as old as human life itself, because it's a social activity. So long as people come together, they have to have financial dealings. They have to deal in their the satisfaction of their wants, the rules of exchange, the medium of exchange, the storage of value, all these things that are necessary for community life. They are a necessary aspect of finance. So when we talk about Islamic finance, it is also another way, it is also a way of engaging in financial activities, but in accordance to the adherence to the divine law of Islam, which is Sharia. Sharia is the divine law of Islam. It is called Sharia, not a law. The Arabic word for a law is qanun, a code. But it was not chosen to be the word that was chosen for Sharia, for Islamic law. Rather, the word that was chosen is Sharia. The meaning of Sharia is a way that leads to a water place, the way that you follow to go and get water, which is essential for survival. So it is as though that the law is what will give you your survival. So the essence of Islamic finance is to offer financial services and products and instruments that are based on compliance to the Sharia. So it will be the same financial products that are offered everywhere, but the only thing is that it has to have this filter of screening, to screen the products, to screen the activities, to screen the instruments. Those that pass the test of compliance to the divine law, they pass. Those that don't pass the test, they are obstructed. So it is a kind of with regards to conventional forms of finance, it is like a kind of a negative filter. It filters those products and activities of conventional finance to restrict some. But there is also positive filtration in it, because it is not just to say don't do this, but rather do everything that will achieve the purpose and intent of the Sharia, because the Sharia has its own purpose and intent. So for all commercial financial transactions under the Sharia, the central precepts are the four things that have been mentioned here. That is the prohibition of riba. We will see the meaning of riba, the prohibition of gharar, the prohibition of gambling, and the prohibition of dealing in Sharia non-compliant goods and services. So under this, we can say that Islamic finance itself is a form of financial intermediation. So all it does is the way intermediation is done in conventional finance. Mobilize funds from surplus units and take them to deficit units. There are people who have surplus funds, they are not in need of them. And then there are people who are in need of funds. So Islamic finance, it intermediates to mobilize those funds from the surplus units to the deficit units, which is essentially what finance does, even in conventional finance. But the only thing is that that intermediation has to be done in accordance with the principles of the divine law. So the intermediation is done through a number of contracts, which a whole session is going to be talking about those contracts. All the contracts that you are going to study, which are being done also, which are being offered by Islamic financial institutions, they are essentially doing that intermediation, moving funds from the surplus units to the deficit units. The key contracts, they form the basis for designing complex financial products, most of which are innovative, as we shall see the innovative products that have been introduced, which is the essence of what the first session was talking about, thinking outside the box, because that is the key to innovation. But there are some key contracts for you to have the mindset that will make you develop those products, because you have to do it within a paradigm. You just don't do it with only the profit motive in mind. So now we will take the major prohibitions. These major prohibitions, they are what make Islamic finance stand apart from conventional finance. The major prohibition is, the first one is riba. Riba, it is translated as interest. It is translated as interest, but its original literal meaning is that anything that is in excess. Anything that is in excess, even though it is commonly known as interest, but it means an addition, a premium that is added in certain types of financial transactions, which we shall see. But technically it means that increase which is taken as a premium from the debtor upfront when he is taking a debt, or on account of delay of payment when he's already indebted and he defaults and he is in need of an extension, so he is charged a premium, or an increase on account of exchange of certain goods and money, if they are of the same kind. When you are doing the exchange, you make an increase without making it an equal exchange of value. That is also regarded as interest. So this definition identifies three forms of increase that are regarded as riba. When you take a debt, when you take a loan from somebody, there is a stipulation that when you are repaying, you will repay the capital plus a premium. The premium that is stipulated is regarded as riba because it is over the principal amount. Or when you have taken a loan that you are supposed to settle it after 1 month and there is delay, you want the dates, you want an extension for another month, and in lieu of the extension, a premium is stipulated on you. That premium is also regarded as interest, as riba. Or the third type is when you are making an exchange transaction. So see, you can see that the first two, they are dealing with contracts of debt. Upfront, you take a loan and a premium is stipulated on you during repayment. Or you are already indebted, there was no premium, you are supposed to, you took a loan of 1 million, you are repaying 1 million, but because there was delay, a premium is charged on you. So these are for debt transactions. The third type is for exchange transactions. When you are exchanging certain goods, they are supposed to be at par, and you are not supposed to charge any premium in the exchange of certain goods. We shall see the details of how that is done. Now this is regarded as a sinful act. The charging of that premium, that increase, is regarded as unacceptable. The reason for this is verses of the Quran, which is the basis of deriving the Islamic law of Islam. The first instruction in the Quran says, "O you who believe, fear Allah and leave what remains of riba, if indeed you are believers. And if you desist not, then take notice of a woe from Allah and His Messenger. But if you repent, you shall have your capital sums. Neither are you unjust, nor are you dealt with unjustly." So this verse says that riba is an increase that is over the capital sum, because it says if you repent, you shall have your capital sum. So any increase over the capital that you have given in a loan is regarded as that riba. And it also mentions the punishment, that if you do not desist, then take notice of a woe from Allah and His Messenger. That is, it is as though those who are engaged in the practice of charging and taking riba, interest, they are engaged in a war with Allah and His Messenger. And it also specifies the raison d'etre, that is the reason, the philosophy, what they call the illah, the lexis, the reason behind the prohibition, which is unjust dealing. Because he says, neither are you unjust, nor are you dealt with unjustly. Neither are you unjust by charging an extra amount, nor are you dealt with unjustly, nor do you accept yourself to be placed in a situation of being dealt with unjustly by you making payment for something in lieu of nothing. It also says, "O you who believe, do not take riba, an increase that is multiplied several times, and fear Allah so that you may prosper." Here it describes riba as an increase that is multiplied several times. And this is a reference to anyone who knows banking and anyone who has read accounting, even elementary accounting. He knows the meaning of the way compound interest operates. Compound interest multiplies the interest amount several times. And normally here I cite the widely quoted statement of former President Obasanjo when talking about the international creditors and their relationship with Nigeria. He said all that we took from the international creditors was about $2 billion. And we have already paid $16 billion. And they are still saying Nigeria owes another $16 billion. If you are to ask me what is the worst evil on earth, I will tell you it is compound interest. You see, $2 billion, it has translated into this huge amount, which is what the Quran is saying. An increase that is multiplied several times. Because that is how interest operates. Anyone who rudimentary accounting makes you realize this. Another thing is, another quotation is from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is that he has cursed the one who takes riba, the one who gives it, the one who writes it, and the one who and the witnesses, those who act as witnesses to the transaction. And it is regarded as one of the 7 major sins in Islam. The 7 major sins in Islam are associating partners with God, magic, sorcery, murder, taking the wealth of orphans, consuming riba, taking interest, and running away from the battlefield, and slandering innocent women and accusing them of fornication. So it is mentioned as one of the 7 major sins. This prohibition regarding riba is not restricted to Islam only. It is something that is common in the Judeo-Christian Islamic tradition. In Judaic tradition, it is clearly prohibited. In the Christian tradition, especially the Catholic tradition, it is clearly prohibited. These are some quotations which I was able to get from the Torah and from the Jewish tradition. In Exodus it says, when you lend money to any of my people, to the poor among you, you shall not be to him as a creditor, nor shall you impose upon him any interest. In Deuteronomy, do not charge your brother interest, whether on money or food or anything else that may earn interest. In Leviticus, take no interest, no usury or interest from him, but fear your God, that your brother may live with you. You shall not lend him your money for usury, nor lend him your food at a profit. And in Ezekiel, it says, a righteous man does not lend at usury or take interest. This quotation in Ezekiel, it shows that it is general. It's not just restricted to charging your brother interest that is abominable. Charging anybody else interest is abominable in the Jewish tradition. This is also a quotation from one rabbi. He said, the most concrete expression of God's love for the debtor is, of course, the prohibition against the taking of interest. By rabbinical interpretation, not only is the lender prohibited from charging interest, the borrower is prohibited from offering to pay interest. The Torah rejects the entire notion of a loan as a transaction that brings benefit to the lender. According to the halakha, the rabbinical law, a person who either lends or voluntarily borrows with interest is disqualified from being a witness in court. This is just like the Islamic tradition, which says that a loan is regarded as a transaction that does not bring any benefit to the lender, because a loan is supposed to be a philanthropic act. It's not an act that you get a profit from it. In the Islamic tradition, it is said that the Prophet ﷺ saw written on the gates of heaven that an act of charity is multiplied 10 times, but the act of giving a loan is multiplied 18 times for the creditor. So he asked the angel, how come an act of charity is multiplied 10 times, but an act of giving a loan is multiplied 18 times? He said, because when you give a charity to someone, you can give it to someone who is in need and someone who is not in need. But for the debtor who comes looking for a credit, He will only ask for it when he is in dire need. So that is why when you give somebody a loan, you are not only you are doing an act of charity to him, and even more, because you are relieving him of his distress. He is a distressful person. That is why he came to ask for that loan. And in the Roman Catholic tradition, we have this quotation from Luke in the New Testament: but love your enemies, do good and lend, hoping for nothing in return, and your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High. You see, he says, hoping for nothing in return. And one of the Catholic philosophers, St. Thomas Aquinas, he said to take usury for money lent is unjust in itself, because this is to sell what does not exist, and this evidently leads to inequality, which is contrary to justice. This, he even tells you a rationale for the prohibition of interest, because money, when at the time the opportunity cost that is the basis for charging interest is something that is non-existent, because they say if you have 1 million and you part with it as a loan to somebody, he is depriving you of making use of that 1 million to get money, to get a profit. There is an opportunity for you to make something out of it. So he should pay you a charge for losing that opportunity, the opportunity cost. St. Thomas Aquinas is saying that this is you are charging something for nothing, because this opportunity cost is illusory, because money does not increase by itself. There has to be an intervention. If you keep money, if you keep that 1 million in your account and you don't touch it, it is not going to develop. So there is no opportunity cost. And if you engage in developing it, you may lose or you may win. Therefore, to say that there has to be an increase as a result of the time value of money from opportunity cost is to create value out of nothing. This is what the philosophers have said, and there are so many theories of interest for and against. They condemned interest by so many eminent Christian, Catholic men of God. These are some of them, and also some councils of the Catholic Church, like the Second Lateran Council. You can see what it says. Later on, you'll have these slides, and you can see them. So you can see based on this that the prohibition of charging interest is common to Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. The only difference is that it is the opinion of some rabbis in Judaism that interest is only prohibited when a Jew is dealing with a fellow Jew. But when he is dealing with a Gentile, he can charge him interest. But this is not the opinion shared by some other rabbis who see it as general. But up to now in the state of Israel, you have in banks, they have counters for conservative Jews, for Orthodox Jews who want to follow the rabbinical law, and they don't deal with interest in their bank dealings. Now, because of this prohibition, the whole issue of Islamic finance came into being, because the essence was to create a financial system that follows the Sharia. And because the modern financial system is interest is strongly embedded in it, in the banking, in insurance, in the capital markets, in commodity markets, in all markets, interest, the element of interest is central, as though you cannot do any business without interest. So in order to offer the alternative, that is why the whole business of Islamic finance came into being. That is why also it is very, very important when you want to expose yourself to Islamic finance to understand what is this interest, how is it, what do the jurists say about it, how how does it apply to modern finance? And how did the Islamic financial institutions how did they find an avenue, an alternative away from it? If it is true that it is so embedded in the financial system, how come that they were able to release themselves from its shackles? And this is one of the central things that we intend to do. But first, let us understand what interest means. This is from the definition that I said, that interest is categorized into two main classes. The first one is interest in debt transactions. And as I mentioned in the definition, is of two types. An interest that is stipulated upfront when you come to ask to demand for a loan. You will be given a financing, you will be given a loan, whether it is for consumption, whether it is for production, whether it is for trading. You will be given a loan at a stipulated interest, at an interest of X% per annum normally, and then you will also mention the tenor, and you will be given the schedule of payment, and you will know how much you are going to repay, how much is the principal and how much is the interest payment. That kind of interest of debt, that increase, that premium is interest. The other type of interest is riba, of delay in repayment of debts. You already had a debt. Maybe in the beginning it was not even an interest-based transaction. Maybe you bought a car, even from an Islamic bank. They financed you to own a car, and you are supposed to pay. You are financed for a car of 2 million, and you are supposed to pay 2.5 million within a period of 1 year, and then you are not able to pay. Now, if there is a delay in repayment over 1 year, and as premium is stipulated on you, that is calculating the residual value with a percentage that is as premium, that premium that is stipulated on you for repayment is regarded also as riba, even if the initial transaction was not based on interest. So this is the second category of a debt, of riba. The second category of riba. The third is riba of exchange. This riba of exchange is in the exchange of certain goods. There are certain goods that are regarded as that are called goods that are subject of riba, ribawi items. These goods, they are normally the goods that are the medium of exchange, like money, like staple foods. Because in a community that is engaged in trade by barter, usually staple foods are the medium of exchange. People exchange wheat for dates, they exchange wheat for rice. So this type of staple foods that are normally the medium of exchange, they are supposed to be exchanged at par. If you want to exchange a measure of rice, it should be with a measure of rice. If you are going to exchange gold for gold, it has to be at par. 1 gram of gold for 1 gram of gold. Whether the gold is raw or it is processed, it has to be at par. Currency, because they are also store of value and they are mediums of exchange, they are also exchanged at par. So you change 1 naira for 1 naira. But when the species are different, then you can exchange them the way you like. they don't have to be at par. One condition. The second condition is that they have to be exchanged on the spot. There shouldn't be any delay in taking possession. That is, when you exchange gold for gold, it has to be on the spot. When you exchange currency for currency, it has to be on the spot. You can't engage in futures for currency. You can't engage in forward sales for gold or for currency. It has to be on the spot. This is all to prevent this riba. When there is delay or when there is increase in the exchange, then riba sets in. These are the basic rules. These are the basic rules of riba that must be avoided by all Islamic financial transactions. So these are the riba items that I was talking about. They are in two categories. The mediums of exchange, gold and silver, and currency. And the foodstuff, there are staple foods that are capable of being stored. For gold and silver, the exchange has to be at par, as I mentioned. Also for currency. But when they are different, like you want to buy currency, gold with currency, there is no restriction on you. You can sell 1 gram of gold for 18,000, and you can get another trader who is ready to pay you 20,000. That is permissible. The only rule for this is that it has to be spot. It has to be spot. The same with exchange of currency of different units or of different of different species, like dollar for naira. You can change $1 for 355 naira, and you can find somebody who can sell to you the same dollar at 353. So it doesn't have to be the price. It can be arrived at by bargaining, but it has to be on the spot. So you cannot pay for dollar now and then delay taking possession till tomorrow or till much later, as they do in the forwards. You buy the dollar of June in May, so that you hedge your position. If you have some dollar obligations and you are afraid of you are afraid that the price of dollar may rise up, you lock your position by buying the dollar now, but you will take delivery after 1 month. That is not permissible. That is not permissible in Islamic finance. It has to be spot. For staple foods, also, they cannot be exchanged with one another, except for the same type. They have to be at par, like rice for rice, like wheat for wheat. But when you are exchanging one kind for another, like in a barter transaction, it has to be spot as well. Exchange rice now with wheat now. Now, based on this prohibition, a number of activities in conventional markets cannot find acceptability under Islamic finance. And these are the ones that these are some of them. Interest-bearing loans. Interest-bearing loans. So an Islamic financial institution cannot give a loan that bears interest. It cannot give a loan that bears interest. If it has to give a loan, the loan has to be interest-free. So if they have to do working capital financing, where they have to give you money, they have to find a way. They have to find a different way. It can't be an advance of money and then they benefit from it, because any benefit from a loan is regarded as riba. So the conventional loans, whether for consumption, whether for production, they are all regarded as haram, not permissible. Also bonds that are raised in the capital markets, company bonds. A company will sell a bond which is an offer to get a loan from the capital market, from investors in the capital market, and they will receive payment of premium plus they will receive payment of principal plus a premium, which is the interest on the loan. Is not permissible. Like debentures. Like debentures is not permissible under Islamic finance. So if companies want to get financing, they have to look for alternative ways of raising finances from the capital market, which was why they developed sukuk, as you shall see during your third presentation, how companies raise money from the capital market. For conventional ways, they use bonds. Also government bonds. Government bonds like treasury bills, which the governments, they always issue through either through the debt management office or through the central bank, which are actually loans against the government. Government takes the money. They are very secure because they are guaranteed by the credit worthiness of the federal government. The federal government doesn't default, so they are a very safe avenue because you know that the government will not default, they will pay you. But essentially you are giving money to the government as a loan, and the government is paying you the principal plus interest. That interest that you are getting is not permissible, which is also why an alternative was created for government financing, because government can raise financing through a way that is not interest-based, which is the way of the sukuk, as the alternative to interest-based transactions. Interest-bearing securities. There are so many papers in the capital market, so many types of securities. Anyone that is tied to interest is subject of this major prohibition. Ownership and trading in shares of corporations whose main line of activity involves riba, such as conventional banks and insurance companies. Because essentially banks, conventional banks, they deal primarily in their intermediation on interest, because they mobilize savings from surplus units based on interest. Fixed deposit accounts, they will give you interest. Then they will advance the money to the deficit units as financing based on interest at a higher rate. The difference between the interest they charge and the interest they are going to give the depositors, that is their own income. That's the way conventional banks, they do their intermediation. Now that activity, which is principal in the activities of banks, makes their income completely, mostly interest-based, even though it's not 100% interest, because they do other types of services which they charge commissions, and under Islamic finance, commissions can be charged because it is in lieu of real activity. But interest is regarded as non-permissible. Because of that, to own shares of such companies, of conventional banks, is regarded also as unacceptable under Islamic finance. Also insurance companies, because the principal line of business of insurance companies involves also an element of riba, of interest, because the premium you are paying, you are getting something in return higher than it when when there is a loss event and they are taking they are doing the underwriting business to pay you off. So you are exchanging a little amount of money for a big amount of money. And in case where you don't get anything, you are supplying money and you are getting nothing in return. So in both cases, there is interest. So insurance companies too, dealing in their shares is regarded as unacceptable activity under Islamic finance. Charging cost of funds. When you charge, when you are advancing a financing and you say the cost of funds is such and such, that is also regarded as a prohibited activity. Delayed payment charges on debt obligations. banks usually stipulate delayed payment charges. When you are supposed to, when you are due for repayment and there is delay, they are going to charge you. Even Islamic banks, they do it. But the difference between conventional banks and Islamic banks is that Islamic banks, they do it as a penalty. And when they charge you as the penalty, they don't take it as part of their income. Neither does it go to any of their staff or their shareholders or their Sharia scholars. It goes to charity, because it is essentially as a penalty against deliberate deliberate delay in repayment. But otherwise, if it is stipulated, the delayed payment charges as a charge against the opportunity cost of you paying back the money at the time when I was supposed to use it, then that is regarded as interest. So delayed payment charges is unacceptable. Rent on money, which is essentially like the charging the cost of funds. Overdrafts where you are asked also to pay, and guarantees, bank guarantees when they are not funded. Charging on bank guarantees that are not funded is also an interest-based transaction. Financing against bills or receivables. How do they finance against bills or receivables, and how does interest enter into it? If somebody is expecting payment from NMPC, he's expecting payment of 10 million from NMPC. NMPC doesn't default, and you know that NMPC, they have money. I mean, it's not like a company that was formed just last year. You don't know what is its even the financial may be false. So you are sure that their repayment is sure banker. You are sure about it. With that bill of repayment of 10 million, which is going to mature maybe in June, and you are in need of money, you can approach somebody who has money and say, this is a bill of 10 million that I have. I'm ready to take 9 million from you, and take the bill. Whenever it matures, take 10 million from NMPC. That is financing against a receivable, isn't it? Like discounting. Now that is an interest-based transaction, because it is, oh, you took 9 million in order to repay 10 million. You took 9 million in order to repay 10 million. So that is an interest-based transaction as well. And Islamic finance doesn't engage in that discounting of commercial papers. Also, sale of debt or debt instruments, which is also like this discounting. You have a debt on somebody, and then you transfer the debt on another person at a discount, not at par. You can sell your debt, but at par. If you have a debt of 1 million, somebody owes you 1 million, you can transfer the debt to another person at par. The same 1 million, transfer it at par. But if you transfer it at a discount, it becomes an interest-based transaction. Futures and forwards trading of currency and foodstuff. You know, in Forex, there is nothing wrong in engaging in Forex trading. There is nothing wrong in engaging in Forex trading. The only thing is you have to observe 2 rules when engaged in Forex trading. The first one is that it has to be spot, because in Forex trading you are dealing with currency. And when you are exchanging currency for currency, no matter what type of currency they are, it has to be a spot transaction. So you can't engage in forwards. You can't buy dollars now for delivery a week later or a month later. It has to be spot. The second condition is that the margin, if you want to do leveraging, if you want to take a margin, the margin has to be Sharia compliant. Normally, what do the brokers do? The brokers, they ask you to, if you have $10,000 and you engage with a broker, he will tell you he will give you a margin. He will give you a margin of 100. So if you have $10,000, you can trade in $1 million. You can trade in $1 million. Because if you have only $10,000, maybe all you will get in a transaction from the currency movement will be like only maybe $1.6 out of your $10,000, because you normally is 0.0016. That is the only currency movement, and when you multiply that by 1,000 or by 10,000, the best is maybe $16. So, but when you multiply that $16 by 100, then that translates into 1,600, 1,600. But you cannot raise $1 million. But the broker can make you trade in that amount, and then he will charge you a commission. The commission he is charging you is actually a payment of the advance he gave you, of the additional, of the advance that he gave you, of the additional money over your $10,000. So actually he's giving you a loan and charging you interest. So if you do margin trading, when you are doing Forex, you are taking riba. But there is a way which in Islamic finance, there is a way which in which they do Forex without engaging. They do the leverage, they do margin trading. But how do they do it? They do it by getting, by what they call getting cash. How do you get cash? You engage into commodity trading. The broker will buy commodities and then sell to you for delayed payment. And then you appoint another broker to sell the commodities for you so that you get immediate money now. So if, for instance, you want your margin, you have $10,000, you want $1 million, so the broker will buy commodity for $1 million, and you will undertake to buy from him for $1,010,000. For $1,010,000, payable after 1 month. Payable after 1 month. And then that money that you got, commodity that you got, you will go to the same exchange, the commodity exchange, sell it. Normally, because it is done within a few hours, within few minutes, you will sell it for the same amount. So you will get the 1 million that he bought the commodity for. You will get the 1 million, and then it is on you to repay him $1,010,000 after 1 month, and you have a whole month to be using that $1 million and engage in trading. So you can do margin trading. This one is Sharia compliant. But the way they do it, using the platform of the brokers, it is unacceptable under Islamic finance. It's a bit boring, huh? So, yes.
Can you explain on the guarantee?
Yeah, exactly. The question of guarantee. You see, a guarantee is regarded also as an interest-based transaction, because when a guarantee is not funded, what it translates into is that in case of default of the guaranteed party, the guarantor is going to pay. The guarantor is going to pay, and he will charge the party, the guaranteed party, to repay him. Even if he repays him at par, the same amount that he gave, the fee that he took for the guarantee, it translates into a debt that has brought a benefit to him. So that is why guarantees, charging fees for guarantees, it should be restricted to the only administrative charges of actually writing the guarantee. But to tie it to the amount of the guarantee and the tenor of the guarantee, to make it into a service, the guarantee has to be fully funded. If it is fully funded, then you never enter into a situation whereby the guarantor is going to use his money to repay the creditor, and then come and ask the guaranteed party, to pay him off. So that is why I made that distinction. I said where the guarantee is not funded. But if it is fully funded, then you can charge any fee you like for a guarantee. Even though we are still, this is the opinion of certain Sharia boards, and at the central bank, this is up till now the phrase, the council in the central bank has not taken a position regarding guarantees. It's going to be very soon, they will take a position regarding it. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Okay. My question is regarding the hedging.
Hedging, yes.
Yes. A lot of times you have contracts that are signed over a period of time.
Yes.
And payments are being done over a milestone period.
Yeah.
Now, assuming you sign, because hedging is mostly done with international countries.
Yes.
Most of the time because of the currency difference.
Yeah.
Now, my question is this: assuming you sign a 2-year contract,
Yeah.
4 months of $10,000,
Yes.
and you're going to pay that $10,000 at certain time
Yeah.
over the period of 24 months.
Mm.
And today the dollar is 360. There is a forecast of maybe dollar becoming 400 naira before you finish that payment.
That payment.
What's the take of Islamic banking with regards to hedging that payment into a particular exchange rate?
Yeah, that's a very good question. You see, hedging as a principle is acceptable. But the only thing is that the way it is done. I mean, to hedge is a risk management tool. And protection of wealth is acceptable under Islam. You have to protect your wealth against loss. You have to mitigate risks. Mitigating risk is permissible. That is why we are asked in the Quran, when you enter into a debt transaction, put it down to writing. And when you are on a journey, you don't have someone to put it down in writing, take a collateral. That is a risk mitigating action. So to hedge is a risk mitigation. But then if you are to do any mitigation, it has to be in compliance with the principles of the law. Now, if you do the hedging the way they are doing it the conventional way, it means you are going to enter into forward trades in currency. Buy dollar now against the dollar that will be delivered to you for your July payment. You buy it. There is delay in taking possession, which is haram, because it is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ said, exchanging gold for gold, silver for silver, it has to be at par, and it has to be yadam biyad, hand by hand. Give now and take possession now. So how do Islamic banks do it to guard against this prohibition? They do it under the principle of what they call al-wa'ad. That is an undertaking, a promise. A promise is not a contract. Usually, if for instance, I enter into a transaction and I'm supposed to make payment of $10,000. I'm supposed to make payment of $10,000 to a house agent. Maybe I am a travel agent and I'm looking. I want hotels for my pilgrims in Mecca. So I want $10,000 that I will pay in Ramadan, which is going to be in May, say, for instance. And I am afraid that the dollar may shoot up at that time. So I enter into a contract now for taking the dollars in Ramadan. That is not permissible. So what do? I make undertaking. I will tell either the BDC or the central bank, I promise I am making an undertaking to purchase $10,000 at 355 naira in July. I'm not making the contract now. It is an undertaking. Then when July comes, I will exercise that undertaking. Normally, the central bank itself, it can say, okay, I will also undertake to sell to you in July. But because they are two separate undertakings, they are not a contract. Each one is making the undertaking unilaterally. Unilateral undertakings. So come July, I will exercise that undertaking, just like you exercise an option. I will exercise that undertaking, and there is no fee for that. I don't pay anything for making the undertaking. It's not like an option. In an option, you have to pay a fee. Even whether you exercise it or not, you have to pay a fee. But for an undertaking, you don't pay any fee. So come July, you exercise that, you give the value of 350,000, and then that is when you enter into the currency exchange. But you have hedged your position by virtue of that unilateral undertaking. So that is one way they do it. That is one way they do it. Another way they do it is by entering into exchange, buying commodities and selling for delivery at a later date. Because when you are buying commodities, you can do it spot, you can do it futures. You can do it spot, you can do it futures. But normally the mechanism of the wa'ad, that is the undertaking, is the one that is used. And even for the central bank, this is the one they approved for Jaiz. They have approved for Jaiz to enter into forward currency transactions based on the principle of wa'ad. Okay. This is the rationale for the prohibition of riba, that there is injustice and exploitation, as we saw. Because on what, no, yes.
In this transaction, as you just mentioned,
Yes.
where you have a promise, that thank you, sorry. In this transaction where there is this promise,
Yes.
undertaken. Now, in the value determined, like say the dollar at 350.
Yes.
Now, I mean, what happens when at the date, maturity date, the dollar is like 355?
Yeah. When at maturity date, the dollar, the price has moved.
Yeah.
You have your undertaking. You have hedged your position. You are going to use the same price that you did the undertaking. And you see in fiqh, fulfilling a promise is obligatory, especially if it has some financial implication. If there is financial implication, it's obligatory and it is enforceable. And this is one way. This is one area where Islamic law, especially of the Maliki fiqh, which is the one we are operating here, where it comes in consonance with English common law. In English common law too, promises are enforceable. You can enforce it by court. So you can go to the court by virtue of that exercise of unilateral undertaking, and the counterparty will be compelled to sell to you at that price which you had already mentioned in the purchase undertaking. Yes.
Thank you very much. On the issue of forwards and futures,
Yes.
you know, for futures, they have what they call mark-to-market on a daily basis,
Yeah.
which takes out the inefficiency in the market. What's because of that particular, so it's as if you are writing the future every single day. So is that still prohibited?
All kinds of futures are not acceptable. Mark to market, mark to whatever, they are all not acceptable, because that is in the currency markets. But in the commodity markets, in the commodity markets, if you are buying with currency, then that is acceptable. Futures are acceptable in the commodity markets, but in the currency markets, it's not acceptable. So the rationale is that in riba, there is injustice and there is exploitation. And as we saw in the statement of Obasanjo, it is exploitative. And that is why you will always have that is why in history, whenever there used to be calamity in the medieval ages in Europe, the first place they are going to attack is the place of the money lenders. The bankers, the money lenders. They usually used to attack them because they were exploitative. And even in of Venice, Shylock, the way he is presented, and the bloodthirsty, merciless, exploitative merchant. Because of what? Because of usury, because of lending, and because he's a money lender. So it is exploitative, and this is what it says in the Quran: "La tadlimuna wa la tudlamun." Neither are you being unjust, nor are you dealt with unjustly. So there is injustice in it. It creates a rentier class in society that only receive reward without corresponding risk, because when you charge interest, you are transferring your risk. You are not sharing the risk. Somebody is coming with a business proposal. He's coming with a business proposal. He'll say, I will finance you. Whether your business succeeds or it fails, you have to pay me back my principal and pay me back my return. What if I lose? That is your business. What if I gain? That is your business. But you are going to gain? Yes, of course, that is what I am doing. So you transfer your risk. You take the risk off your shoulders and put it 100% on the debtor. So you will be there with your money, never suffering a loss. The only risk you are taking is the credit risk that he may not pay. And even that you mitigate it by taking a collateral, even multiple collaterals. You will take multiple collaterals. That is why you see so many properties, they have been sold off by banks to recover their money, because they will not accept whenever you have banks writing off bad loans, make sure that they were loans which they gave to themselves. When they give the loans to their directors and to their top management, those are the bad loans. But the loans that are on ordinary people, they will always be recovered. Also, it leads to inefficient markets, because the determination of interest is arbitrary. And that is why money is not treated as a commodity under Islamic finance. When you do your transactions based on interest, you are making money a commodity, while money is supposed to be a determinant of value, and you are making the money itself to become a commodity that will be traded. What will determine its value? It is arbitrary. Also, it should avoid making money and other mediums of exchange as commodities, leading to their utilization to increase the purchasing power without corresponding productive activity, the purchasing power of the people that have it. Okay, this is the first major prohibition, which is interest. It is as though it is the only prohibition in conventional finance, which is why in Nigeria we call the alternative to be non-interest banking, because this interest permeates in so many aspects of finance, not only in banking, as we saw, but in the capital market as well as in insurance. The second one is gharar. Gharar means uncertainty that leads to exploitation of any of the parties to a transaction. An uncertainty either in uncertainty in either the value of what you are exchanging, or in the ability to deliver, or in any stipulated conditions where there is uncertainty over the roles of the parties and what they are getting in the exchange transaction. This kind of uncertainty is not acceptable because it leads to exploitation. Because if you are exchanging something which you are not able, which you don't know its actual value, then you are exploiting the counterparty. Somebody, he comes with a piece of glass and he says, this is a precious stone. And he sells it to you for a precious stone. He sells it to you for 100,000 naira, while it is just ordinary glass that will only sell for maybe 10 naira. That is exploitative. On what account did he take 10,000, 100,000 from you and he gave you something that was valueless? Or he is unable to deliver. He is unable to deliver. Somebody will come and say, and enter into a transaction with you to sell to you stolen property, his car that was stolen. Say, you see, my car was stolen and we're looking for it, and the police are doing a very good job. I'm very confident they're going to get it. You know, this car, if it is with me now, you will only be able to, I will only sell it to you for 2 million. But give me 500,000. Whenever the police bring it, take it, it's yours. Just for 500,000. Is that fair? Because if they don't get the car, you have taken 500,000 naira for nothing. And you have paid 500,000 naira for nothing. So that is exploitative. And Allah Ta'ala says, "O you who believe, do not squander, do not consume the wealth of one another without justice, without a just cause." So any of the following is gharar, uncertainty about the ultimate result of the contract, which is the counterparty risk, a settlement risk. That is, he's unable to settle. He said, I will sell to you, and he's unable to produce, like the one who is selling a stolen car, his car that was stolen. Uncertainty about the nature or quality or specifications of the subject matter. That is, you don't disclose some material information that is necessary to the counterparty for him to know what you are selling. You sell something. You sell something without clear disclosure. You hide defects. This is also a kind of gharar. Uncertainty about the rights and obligations of the parties. Like you combine a contract so that a person will be playing a dual role. You don't know what kind of role he is playing. Is he a debtor or is he a seller? Like you tell somebody, I will buy this projector from you, but on the condition that you will also give me a loan of 100,000. So he is selling you his projector, and he is also giving you a loan. So he is parting with his projector, and he's also parting with his money. In such a situation, is he not going to embed a benefit that he wants to get from giving you the loan in the price of the projector, so that you will benefit from it? The projector is worth 500,000. He will say, this is 550, since I am giving you, so that indirectly he is taking interest. This is a kind of gharar. Or in a combination of contract where his role is not clearly, the combination of contract will lead to a situation of committing a prohibited act. Also, deceit, fraud, or withholding value-relevant information, they all are aspects of uncertainty, excessive uncertainty. Why is gharar prohibited? It is prohibited because of exploitation. It also leads to disputes, and it also leads to taking the wealth of others for without a just cause, as I mentioned in the verse which I quoted earlier. There is a gharar that is tolerated when it is minor and it cannot be avoided. minor gharar that cannot be avoided is permissible. For instance, when you buy a whole truck of cement, it's quite possible that maybe 1 or 2 bags may be damaged, 1 or 2 some may be damaged. It's normal, it comes. It doesn't, you don't have to say that you have to inspect each and every bag of cement to assure that there is no damage, to make sure that you know what you are buying. So long as there is no deliberate lack of disclosure of defect, then that is tolerable. Also, this kind of uncertainty, lack of certainty, is also tolerated in non-exchange transactions, like in transactions of that are voluntary in nature, like acts of philanthropy. For instance, if I say to you, I will sell my car that was stolen to you for 500,000, that is not acceptable. But if I were to tell you, my car that was stolen, I'm giving it to you as a gift, would that not be acceptable? Would that be acceptable or not? If I say to you, my car that was stolen last month, and the police are working actively to get it, I've given it to you as a gift. Will you accept or not? Will you accept the gift or not? Will you say this is gharar, this is haram? I will not accept the gift. Because you don't lose anything when you don't get the car. And when you get it, it is to your benefit. So it is a contract that is quite acceptable because there is no exploitation in it. And there is no dispute. When the car is not, when the police fail to find the car, will you come back to me and say, I didn't get the car, give me another one? Do you have any right to come to me and say that I should give you another one? You see? So that is why, so this kind of gharar is tolerated, is acceptable in transactions of gifts, in transactions of charity, in transactions of philanthropy. It is not acceptable, its lack of acceptability is only in exchange transactions. Because in exchange transactions, it will lead to exploitation, taking wealth for nothing, taking the wealth of others for nothing. Where is it prevalent? Gharar is prevalent in insurance. Insurance is based on gharar. That is why it is the whole thing about actuarial science is on probability, isn't it? Yes. It's all based on probability. Insurance is based on probability. They are going to make their calculations. They have a record of fires that have been happening. Based on that, they see what is the frequency of fires in certain situations, and then they charge premiums. You keep paying premium. They know from their calculations, the most probable thing that will happen is that we are going to make such and such amount of money from the business. Proprietary insurance. By insurance, I mean proprietary insurance, not mutual insurance. You know, there are the mutuals. The mutual insurance, which is now gaining ground in, especially in Germany, the UK, and Japan. In mutuals, they are not engaging. They are not like insurance companies operating the mutuals. They are like cooperatives. People come together and they share the risks among them and contributions, and they pay off the person who suffers a loss from the contribution. But what we are talking about, the insurance that we are talking about now, is the proprietary insurance, where a company will say, I will underwrite your losses against fire, against such and such happenings, and so on. So he will be taking money from you, and you will be paying. If nothing happens, that money will not be returned to you. That money belongs to the company. If something happens, even if your money is not enough to cover the loss will be covered from the company. Now that is uncertainty, because you are paying for something which you are not sure you are going to get. And the company is taking money in lieu of something which is not sure that it is going to, in lieu of something which it is not sure that it is going to undertake to make payment for. So there is a clear case of gharar in insurance, which is the main reason why conventional insurance became unacceptable in Islamic finance. And in lieu of that, they introduced two types of insurances. Cooperative insurance, which is working much like the mutuals, and takaful insurance, which is working like the conventional, because there is a proprietor, but instead of purchasing a premium, you are making a contribution into a pool. You are making a contribution into a pool, and as we saw, gharar is acceptable in making voluntary gift. So what you are paying into the pool is like a voluntary gift. In case somebody suffers from among the contributors, they will take from the pool and pay him off. In case nobody suffers, then the pool belongs to them and they can be given surpluses. That is why in takaful, surpluses are paid. Like Nur Takaful here in Nigeria, last year in 2018, they made surplus payments to their participants, to the participants who have bought their policies, because when they make the calculations, they have made the underwriting payments, and they have taken the charges for their services, and there is still a surplus. Then the contributors are by virtue of the contract, they may be entitled to the surplus. So the main objection to insurance is this gharar. Gharar is the main objection to conventional insurance, because there is uncertainty. Also financial derivatives, such as dealing in options. In options, there is a clear case of gharar. Isn't it? You buy an option, you want to exercise it. The payment that you are making is that when you expect the price to go up, you will exercise your option to buy a stock option, to buy a stock. You are betting. It's like a kind of betting that you are making. So that is dealing in options is based on gharar. Futures and forwards, short selling and speculation in shares, which they do a lot in the capital market, all is a kind of gharar which is not acceptable under Islamic finance. So whenever they are creating products, this prohibition has to be avoided. Another prohibition is gambling. Gambling is betting. That is speculative activities where one party will win at the expense of the other. It is a zero-sum game. You will only win when I lose. I will only win when you lose. This is not acceptable in the Sharia. Why it is prohibited is that it is taking the wealth of people without a just cause, and it is a satanic activity. It is a sin. It obstructs people away from prayer and remembrance of Allah. It breeds hatred and enmity among people. That is why in casinos you will have to have hefty men, because usually it ends up in fights. So you have to have hefty men there always. Yes, to take care of the troublemakers, because somebody he's just not going to accept it. He brings out his money, he loses. He brings out, he loses. He brings out, he loses. He'll just fight. And then lotteries and prize-giving schemes, bonds, investments in casinos and trading in gambling products and in gambling items, they are all prohibited because of this prohibition of gambling. The next one is speculation. Is also a type of gambling. It's a subset of gambling, like the day trading, which they are doing in the capital market. You speculate on the rise in the shares. You go and borrow. You go and borrow shares. You go and borrow stock, You sell them counting on the fact that it is going to, there is going to be a positive price movement, and then you don't put your money, you just take the difference and pocket it. Another prohibition is unethical practices. Unethical practices, like, you see, honesty and transparency in dealings is the underlying principle of commercial transactions. And this is common even in conventional finance. They also, honesty and transparency, they are regarded as good market practices. So manipulation, hoarding, artificial price hiking, and concealment of defects, they are all prohibited under Islamic finance. The next one is dealing in haram products and in haram services. You cannot, there are items that you cannot own under Islamic finance. And what you cannot own, you cannot sell, and you cannot get benefit from it. And among these is the production and sale of forbidden items, forbidden commodities, like intoxicants, alcohol, pork, pornography, dealing in prostitution, sorcery, some aspects of the entertainment industry. They are all regarded as activities that are not acceptable, or services that are not acceptable, and Islamic banks cannot engage in them. Islamic finance cannot engage in them. Now this table summarizes the main differences between conventional and Islamic finance. Financing is not interest-based, it is asset-based. It is asset-based. You will get financing, but it will be through an asset-based financing. So you will be financed to get equipment, you will be financed to get whatever you want of consumption, household items, household products. Then how can you be financed then to get working capital? If what you want is working capital, is cash, how will Islamic banks finance you to get working capital? They also have their own way of doing it. One way of doing financing for you to get housing, for working capital financing, is through through partnership. They enter into the business with you as a partner. That is, you already have your water treatment plant, you are producing pure water, but you are in need of working capital to be purchasing raw materials, and you want money. If the working capital that you want is for the purchase of raw materials, the Islamic bank will purchase the raw materials and sell to you. So still it goes back to asset-based financing. But if on the other hand you want to engage in that, you want money to pay your staff, they can enter with you into a partnership, in which case the whole business will be valued. By valuation, you get experts, valuers, and accountants to make a valuation of the actual value of the business. Then they will make an equity contribution. They will make an equity contribution. If the business is valued at 10 million, they'll say, okay, we are going to put 1 million. And then you will agree on the profit sharing ratio between yourselves. The profit sharing ratio may be according to the capital contribution or based on whatever you agree upon. But the loss bearing will be according to your capital contribution. So now the business is 11 million. 1 million from the bank, 10 million, which is the value of the proprietor. They may ask to have a representative to sit with you in the management of the business, to put an eye. If it is a company, they may ask that there should be a representative of the bank in the board, so that the business will be monitored. And then when there is profit, you will divide it among yourselves based on profit sharing ratio. But they rarely do this. They will only do this with real trustworthy customers. So mostly what they do is, if you want the working capital for raw materials, they will buy and sell to you. If for salary, then they will do ijara for services contract. That is, they will say, okay, we will act as employers for your staff, and then we will sell the contract to you as though you are outsourcing from us. So the person that you are paying 100,000, you will end up paying him 105,000. You will pay the bank, and the bank will be paying the salaries to the workers, and then will be making payments spread over the period of the financing. And many other ways which they can do to finance, but normally the financing is always tied to an asset. Even where you want to, you will get money, they have another way of making you have money, which is through commodity murabaha, commodity financing. You go to they will buy a commodity from an exchange, a commodity exchange, and then sell to you for future payment, for deferred payment, and then you will sell that commodity to get cash. So you will have the cash that you want, but not as a loan. The loan that is on the debt that has been created is through the commodity which was bought and sold to you. So normally the financing has to be tied to an asset, and it could also be based on generating a profit from the sale of an asset or its use of right. Interest-based deposits. Under conventional finance, deposits are created based on interest, fixed term deposit accounts, but under Islamic finance, the deposits are not interest-based, but based on profit and loss sharing, or as interest-free loans. Current accounts are interest-free loans. Current account in Islamic banks do not charge, interest is not accrued to that. But fixed, what mimics the fixed deposit account of conventional banks is the mudaraba deposit account. That is the profit and loss sharing account. The profit and loss sharing account, you enter into it. Normally, the banks, they make it of two types: the restricted, the unrestricted. In the unrestricted, they put their own funds in it, and then there is a profit sharing ratio. Normally here in Nigeria, because the banks are not many, it is skewed against the customers, honestly. Because normally the banks, they take about 70% of the profit, and the customers, they take 30%. But in the Gulf, the opposite is the case. In the Gulf and Malaysia, the banks take 20%, and the customers, they take up to 80%. So you can go through them, because my time is actually up, to see the main differences between them. And this one, it will just make, you don't need, there is no need for myself to take you through them. You can see it is the evolution of modern Islamic finance. And here it will tell you the overview of the way the industry is at the present, so that you will understand that it is now no longer a niche, it is now mainstream, based on the way it is offered, the amount of the assets, and the projections of the assets, and the rate at which it is growing. And this is the overview of the way it is by region, and these are its potential impact in the Nigerian economy, and these are the core contracts for you to learn as the basis of how they do their intermediation, and the details you will take during the next lesson, inshallah. Thank you.